Welcome back, everyone, to Common Sense Choices, and I'm Linda Toupin. Well, it's season 2, month 2, and we're headed into a series that I think you will find absolutely fascinating. If you're a first-time visitor and this is your very first episode, welcome. Pull up a chair, enjoy the conversation. If you're a regular viewer and you've been with me since December of last year, and this is actually episode number 26, thank you for your support. It is always my prayer before we start that something I say will edify you, lift you, encourage you, challenge you, and help you get the most from this beautiful gift called life. Well, God has gifted you 168 hours this week. Oh my gosh, that's like 4 work weeks inside 1 week if you didn't have to sleep. And after you work 40, you have 128 hours left to spend any way you want. If you sleep 8 hours a night, you still have 72 disposable hours. And what we do with every hour, every minute, there's 10,080 minutes in every week, is really what we get from this beautiful gift called life. And so I want you to grab a hold of this gift and your free will and make the most of it. Well, they tell us that when our head hits the pillow, we will have made 35,000 choices today. No wonder you're tired. But one of those choices was to click play on Common Sense Choices podcast. And another choice is to continue listening. Another choice is to share or comment. That's how you get your name in the drawing. And we'll be announcing some winners from previous episodes here in just a second. But we are where we are in our life by the choices we have made or we have allowed others to make for us. It's on a 7-foot piece of art over my shoulder. It is my mantra that this Common Sense Choices podcast is based on. So let's say it together with conviction. I am where I am, but the choices I've made or I've allowed others to make for me. It is the ultimate and personal responsibility. If you want a different life, you got to make different choices. And if you're going to make different choices, you're going to have to hang out with different people. And thank you for allowing me to be one of those people inside your head. They tell us that we become like the 5 people we surround ourselves with. If you woke up this morning and you were not excited about your life, look in the mirror. It is not your spouse's fault. You married them. It's not your children's fault. Children aren't born to fulfill you. I know that stung a little bit, but they aren't. That's not a child's responsibility. I'd hate to be a child with the responsibility of fulfilling my parents' life. If you woke up this morning and you weren't excited about your life, don't blame your boss. You choose to go there. And I don't know if you noticed in America right now, you could have a lot of different jobs. Everybody's hiring. So if we want a different life, we simply have to make different choices. And so I told you last December, I'm going to bring all the people into your life that has made my life beautiful. People who have guided me and helped me. And so I have honored that by bringing you 25 episodes before today full of those people. Well, the best way to never miss one of my episodes is head on over to lindatoupin.com. That's T as in Tom, O-U, P as in Peter, I-N, lindatoupin.com. And if you're on your computer in the upper right-hand corner, if you're on your phone, it's in the upper left-hand corner, there's a sign-in button. That will allow you to receive a free episode every time they're released. There's 2 a month. And I'll think about you and I'll just send it to you. And you won't even have to think about me. You won't have to find me on YouTube, which is Common Sense Choices. You don't have to find me on Facebook, Common Sense Choices, or Apple or Spotify. You guys, I'll think about you. That's the very best way to get every episode. And so while you're over there, head on over and click the button that says stuff I didn't know I needed. I just love it when you go in a store and it's like, wow, I didn't know I needed all that. Because over there, you're going to find our mantra on a coffee mug. So look at your cabinet, look in your kitchen cabinets. Is one of my mugs there? What about your office? What about your classroom? What about your children's bedroom? Is our mantra on the wall. Or you can put one of these little stands that you get down at Hobby Lobby or Target. Or we have kitchen. Before we meet our guest speaker, we're going to have a drum roll, please. I told you that when you comment and share on these episodes, be sure to comment frequently and ask questions. Our guest speakers will go in later on and they will answer some of those questions, or I'll answer them if I know the answer. You will get a chance in our drawing. So for episode number 24 with Dr. Edwards, our winner is Donna Stutzman. Congratulations, Donna. I know you were happy that I was back after a summer vacation reruns. And then episode number 5 with Dr. Dustin Jones, who started Stronger Life here in Lexington, Kentucky. He is revolutionizing optimal health for people over 55. Oh my gosh, that gym is my favorite place. And I'm absolutely shocked and amazed what people, men and women in their 70s and 80s can do, can do in that gym. Oh my word, you guys, you'll be so impressed with that interview. But our winner for that episode was Teresa Chavez. So congratulations, Teresa. You all will be receiving something from my store over at Linda Toupin as well. Well, get ready. We're starting a brand new series in October called End of Life Planning. My son, I'm going to get him on here. He's a pediatric neurologist and he knows fascinating things. I told him the other day, I said, I need to have you on my podcast. Anyway, he asked me what I was doing this fall for some episodes. And I told him, he said, well, it'll be interesting how you put a positive spin on end of life planning, Mom. But you know what? I will, because it gives peace of mind when you have end of life planning. Well, as I promised, I bring you the people that have helped me, that I honor and respect and have great admiration for. And today is no different. All right, we're going to learn about Katie Finnell. Okay, Katie is with Bluegrass Elder Care. All right. And so let's find out a little bit about her. And I can't wait for you to meet her. She is a member of Bluegrass Elder Law PLLC here in Lexington, Kentucky. She graduated from the University of Kentucky and Chase College of Law, and earned her law degree from Northern Kentucky University, Chase College of Law. She is a member of the Kentucky Bar Association and the Fayette County Bar Association, and she earned her LLM, which is Legal Master's Degree, in Estate Planning and Elder Law from Western New England University in 2016. And Katie, in the past, has been the Continuing Legal Education Committee Chair, as well as the past president of the Kentucky Bar Association Elder Law Section. A very accomplished young lady. I can't wait for you to meet her. Katie, welcome to Common Sense Choices.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, Katie, how are things in downtown Lexington, Kentucky today?
A little chilly, but otherwise doing very well.
You know, Katie, I have my fireplace going. You're right. We do have a little chilly weather this morning. Well, Katie, when you were a little girl and you were growing up, did you like walk around and think that I think I'm going to be this lawyer person that helps people with end of life planning? Was that kind of the game plan?
No, it wasn't my game plan at all, but I did spend a lot of time with my grandparents and I really enjoy working with older folks. And, I'm very lucky that I get up every morning and I like my job and I love the people that I work with. And I feel like I'm actually helping people. And so I go home feeling satisfied and it makes for a really good work-life balance, I think.
How many years have you been practicing?
I have been with Bluegrass Elder Law since 2017. Prior to that, I was a sole practitioner and I did the same thing. I started practice in, 2010. My dates are correct. And, I started out doing estate planning. And I had young kids at the time, and it was something where I could kind of set my own schedule. I met nice folks, and I started having more and more questions about long-term care planning and things in the elder law world, which is when I decided to go back to school. And so lawyers are backwards. We get a doctorate first and then a master's. And so I went back to school and I got a master's in estate planning and elder law. So elder law is a wide variety of topics, and it kind of depends on which elder law attorney you're working with. Our firm is Bluegrass Elder Law here in Lexington, Kentucky, and we do estate planning for all ages, probate, guardianship, special needs planning, asset preservation, long-term care planning, and long-term care Medicaid. and that is Medicaid that pays for nursing home care. Some firms also do VA benefits and VA benefits planning for veterans.
Well, I know when I went to your website, I was like, wow, that kind of gave me a big headache. I thought these are a lot of important topics. And of course, my association with you personally is I made an appointment on a recommendation from a friend with elder law. And you were the person that we met with my parents. This was just actually probably a year or two before COVID. And it was my parents and my three brothers. And we all came in there because we knew we needed professional guidance for end of life planning. And, end of life planning starts, in my opinion, when you're in your 20s and 30s. And we'll get into that in just a second. But, I was so impressed by you, Katie, and just your care and your kind manner and just your wisdom and knowledge and your patience with my parents and myself and my brothers. I just can't say enough good things about you.
Well, thank you so much. It's hard to start planning, and people don't like having to talk about it. We have so many people that call and just say, well, I need a will. You probably need a will, but there are so many other things we have to talk about for end of life planning, and not even end of life. We all have unexpected situations come up where we need help, and we have to have the right people in place in order to help us and have permission to access our finances, talk to our doctors on their behalf. And so, we tell people, I like to plan for you during your lifetime. We absolutely want to plan for what happens when you pass away, but my goal is always to make sure you're taken care of during your lifetime and make sure you have those people in place, the necessary documents, and some sort of plan. The plan might change, but at least we have a plan going forward.
So the people that you're seeing on the average day down at your office, uh, other than they need a will, what would you say consumes most of your time in the law office? What are the big issues?
We spend a lot of time explaining to people why they need a good power of attorney document. And so, a will directs your assets when you pass away. I'm less concerned about that. It is important, but I'm more concerned about who can take care of you during your lifetime. So a power of attorney document is you granting the power to someone else to do things like access your finances, your bank account, pay your bills. On the healthcare side, talk to your doctor, make healthcare decisions for you if you're unable to do it yourself. And those are very important. Whether you're in good health or not, we suggest that everybody over 18 have a power of attorney document. It's one of those better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it situations. None of us plan for something to go wrong or to be in that situation, but we've all had surgery or something that might have been planned, but you have surgery and they've given you those good happy drugs, and you probably shouldn't be making decisions for yourself. And maybe you're in the hospital a little longer than you planned. Somebody needs to access your bank account and pay your mortgage or your electric bill, keep that fireplace going on these cold days. So that's a lot of what we spend time talking about. We also do some crisis planning where there wasn't advanced planning, and so now it's an emergency of some sort. Either we're having an emergency surgery, there was a fall, there was some sort of diagnosis. Sometimes children step in and have learned mom and dad haven't been paying the bills, or they've just realized mom and dad don't have any money to pay the bills, or there's all sorts of situations, and it really depends on the family. Some families are very open about things, money, health, things like that. And we meet a lot of families where the kids are totally surprised about something or everything. And every situation is different. Every case is different. We spend a lot of time talking about the individual person and their family. And so this is a little more along the lines of social work or therapy, depending on the situation, as well as legal stuff. When people come in, I want to hear about their kids and their grandkids and their relationships to them. And we talk about their assets, their income, their goals, if they have a retirement plan. But I don't want to get through the whole planning phase and then learn about a surprise child that they just don't talk about. Or, or, oh, by the way, we're on the verge of bankruptcy, or, those kind of catch you off guard situations. So we do ask a lot of personal questions, but that's not because we're being nosy. That's because I just need to know exactly what we're planning for. And we can't come up with a good plan if I don't know all the facts.
Well, and I remember that about our time that we spent with you is just the amount of care that you took in asking what I would have assumed was like common sense questions. But now that like I'm listening to you, I'm like, well, I guess there could be a million scenarios why you would need to know our relationship. And I can't even imagine how difficult it gets in your office sometimes when those surprise situations. Our guest speaker later
Mhm.
this month is a friend of mine whose father was murdered, and how there was no obvious end of, I mean, that was you're dealing with the shock of not only a death but a murder, a trial, and no end of life planning. And she's agreed to come on just to discuss the nightmare that had. So I'm assuming when you say crisis planning, that's what we're talking about right there.
That is crisis planning. When it's unexpected, I think even if somebody is very ill, it still feels unexpected to people. Murder is different.
Yeah.
It wasn't coming, and that had a poor end result. Obviously, a lot of the crisis planning we do has to do with that, and a lot of it has to do with something like mom fell. She's broken all of the bones and shattered her pelvis, whatever, um, and needs surgery. We don't think she'll ever walk again. She can't go home. She lives by herself. We can't afford to pay caregivers. What are we going to do? And a lot of that is kind of going through how health insurance works, what exactly insurance will pay for, how you qualify for Medicaid if long-term care is going to be an issue. And depending on the situation, if we're needing to do some sort of asset preservation, the rules are different in every state. Medicaid is a federal program with state-specific rules. So Medicaid is the pay source for skilled nursing. So if you live in a nursing home and can't afford to pay $8,000 or $9,000 a month for your own care, you're probably looking at Medicaid. And it sounds scary, but it's really just health insurance. And so there's some parameters we talk about how you qualify for it. And if that's the route you go, we can navigate you through it. And if you want to go another route, we can talk about the options too. And it really depends on the situation. Some people have support at home where their loved ones or friends can provide some of the care, and some people don't. And some people don't want that. It's one thing to be a spouse and love and care for someone for years. It's another thing to truly be their primary caregiver. That's very stressful on the relationship. It's very stressful on the caregiver spouse, and you kind of miss that previous relationship where you're partners. While you might still be partners in the emotional sense, one of them is doing all the physical labor and the caregiving, and that's really draining.
Well, and everybody listening right now, I'm sure there's a lot of people nodding their heads because we've all lived long enough to see almost every scenario you just described, and the ramifications of that on the relationship with the people can be devastating. And even with the best of care, because I just remember our time with you understanding the Medicare ramifications and what would happen to assets if someone, there's just a lot to know. It's not like I can make a meme and post it on the Facebook and tell you what you need to know about Medicaid and Medicare and all of those.
Mhm.
And of course, those rules are always changing too. Um, so, in a practical sense, let's say someone listening, they're in their 30s and 40s, maybe their parents are in their 60s or 70s. You know, once you have that initial meeting, I mean, don't we kind of have to keep up with that also as time evolves every few years, or what do you recommend there?
Mhm. Well, when we start with younger clients, we're normally doing what you'd consider regular estate planning. So we're talking about powers of attorney, whether a will or a trust is better for your situation, and your goals about moving forward. Usually, we have documents reviewed every 3 to 5 years, depending on the situation. But we tell all of our people, if something big happens, call us or email us. If there's a birth or a death or a divorce or a marriage, then you might be looking at updating your documents. If you have minor children and you and your partner are talking about, what if something happens to both of you? Who would be the appropriate guardian for your children? That might change over time because maybe it has to do with the school district. Maybe the people you picked got divorced or moved to somewhere much warmer today. And so we're talking about updating things more for practical purposes
Right.
like that. And as you age, we talk about the retirement plan. Um, are you going to stay in your big house? Are you looking to move to independent living? Are you going to buy that condo in Florida? And it's not my job to tell you what to do with your money. It's my job to explain how the law works and how it might affect you and what the best way to manage your situation, whatever you choose your situation to be.
Well, and that's another thing. As you were talking, I remember our time together. You didn't tell us what to do. You told us what the law said and what the options were. I mean, you were very clear and cut and dry that this is the law, this is what your options are, because our value systems, every individual's value systems are very different. And you brought up minor children, and I know in a previous episode I was kind of advertising this because, you know, the world is full of parents who have made no decisions, and it scares me to death because I know the ramifications of that, where both parents were to be tragically killed at the same time, and they had made no plans for their children. And I just remember myself, we were preparing for an international flight. It was the first time we were both on an airplane, probably together for a long period of time. And we decided, because our children were small, like grade school, and we had not made that decision. We had wills, but we had not made that important decision. And I remember the the anguish that created, because you have to be
Mhm.
really honest about all your relatives on both sides of the family. And do we give our children to someone who's not a relative? And like you just pointed out, that changes over time because they change over time. And you may have given your kids to somebody 10 years ago that you would not do that today. I'm sure you see that too.
Absolutely. And that's a personal decision. And it's different when you have a baby and if a sibling or a grandparent is appropriate, and even if they live out of state, moving out of state doesn't particularly affect that baby. But if you have a teenager that has friends and a social life and is in all sorts of activities, they probably want to stay local. It would be, losing your parents is hard enough. Having to move and uproot your life and everybody you know and love and your regular routine is so hard. But you also have to keep in mind that at that point you have a teenager, meaning the grandparents are also, 15 years older, 16 years older. Even if the grandparents were the one when they were the baby, they might not be the ones that are the appropriate guardian as teenagers. Teenagers are hard. It's a lot to put up with. It's a lot of taxing, driving around at hours you probably don't want to be awake. And so, that's a conversation to have. you know,
Well,
with
and
the partner.
I know from my own grandchildren, and as
Mhm.
healthy as I am, I'm like, after about 4 hours, I'm kinda done. It's like, okay, I understand why you have children when you're younger because,
Mhm.
in your 60s and 70s, you don't have the energy that it takes, but unfortunately, that's what we see a lot out there today, but yeah, mine are children. Um, can we briefly go into the difference? Because I don't know that a lot of people know the difference between a will and a trust.
Okay, sure. So, what your will directs is anything in your name alone without a listed beneficiary. Okay. So, a lot of married couples own things jointly. Your house is owned jointly with the right of survivorship. You have a joint bank account. And so those aren't in your name alone. If you own them jointly, your whoever the joint owner is the sole owner when you pass. Most of us have some sort of retirement account, IRA, maybe some life insurance. You put beneficiaries on those. You can put a beneficiary on a bank account as well. And so when you pass away, your beneficiary claims that asset. What a will directs is anything in your name alone. And so if you were a single person, you might own the house by yourself. You probably own your car by yourself. Maybe you never got around to adding or changing beneficiaries on your other accounts. Maybe it's because a spouse passed, or maybe you just never did it to begin with. If it's in your name alone, it's what's considered a probate asset. So when you go to court for probate, they probate your will. At least in Kentucky, you do not have to open a probate unless you need to get a hold of an asset or some other very specific situation. So a lot of people pass away and don't use their will, don't need a will because um, there's no asset to claim. But we don't know until that day comes because your assets are changing all the time. You know, how many cars have we all gone through over the years and things like that, or you decide you really dislike a bank or a branch opens closer to your house and you open a new account and you just don't set everything up like you think you did. Uh, a trust avoids probate. And so the trust can own things. There are so many different kinds of trusts out there. I'm just going to speak very generally about them. We are generally talking about a revocable trust, meaning you can put stuff in, you can take stuff out, you can change the beneficiaries, the amounts, who you want to be in charge when you pass, and that can help you avoid probate. So you can put personal items in that. You can put deed your house into it, change the title of the car, change the ownership of bank accounts, or you can make the trust the beneficiary of accounts. And when you pass away, the trust is frozen. It becomes irrevocable because you are the only one that can change it. And once you pass away, you obviously can't change it anymore. So whoever your trustee is now in charge, and they're in charge of following all the rules and the parameters of the trust that you set up before you passed. And it is a good way to manage assets for minor children. So, a lot of people that we do this for have minor children, and if something happened to them, you don't want your 6-year-old to inherit your $1 million life insurance policy. And kind of the way that works is it's a whole court process depending on the state, but at the age of 18 they just get that money. And I don't know about you, but when I was 18 it would have been a poor choice to hand me $1 million. And so that's kind of what we're planning for. That trust can also help avoid probate if you own things in multiple states. And this is kind of a state specific thing. In Kentucky, the real estate laws are kind of complicated, and our laws essentially say something along the lines of real estate passes immediately upon death unless it doesn't. And there are all sorts of crazy rules. And if you pass away owning real estate, in multiple states, sometimes you have to open a probate, a court case in all of those states, which means you might have several attorneys. And it just takes a while because they have to be opened in a certain order and closed in a certain order, and you have multiple attorneys involved, and nobody wants that. And so it's a way for us to help people plan for moving their assets the easiest and most efficient way.
So your recommendation is for people who have an average amount of real estate and accounts and whatever, that a trust is a much better option.
It really depends on the situation. And
Okay.
that's kind of the terrible lawyer answer, the it depends answer. But it depends. It does. There's too many factors, and we talk through them all, and it really is situation specific. Our office does a lot of presentations. We're asked to speak a lot at, senior centers, church groups, some of the senior living facilities in town, and I always get some very specific questions, and the answer is always, it depends. I need to know your situation. We have to have that talk. We have to sit down, and I need to know all about you and your situation, because for one person I might recommend one thing, but if you come in and you tell me your children absolutely despise each other, your plan, even if your assets are the same and your family structure is the same, that relationship can be the deciding factor about how we move forward.
Wow. I mean, I would put you in the miracle category. I mean, you're a miracle worker, Katie. I mean, that's what you do. When you said you're a therapist and a social worker, I thought, no kidding, girl.
Yeah. Yeah, we've heard it all. I tell people that you can't tell me anything I haven't heard before, and I am really hard to shock.
well, because when I get very interesting people like you in private, I'm like, tell me your worst story.
I wouldn't even know where to start. I have a top few.
Well, I mean, seriously. But I mean, the reason I asked you that was because once I got a real financial planner and he started, I mean, a real good one, like looks at everything. Like that's the first place he sent me, was to an organization that does trust, and to start making those kind of decisions, which I had never made before because I'd always had a will. So that's why I answered that question. Which kind of brings us to, like, what are the worst mistakes? Like, if you were trying to make the worst mistakes you could possibly make with all of this, let's make that list, Katie. Why don't we go through that list? You've seen it all.
So I have a few big ones in my head. So everybody should have a power of attorney document. Nobody expects a health crisis or something to happen, but they do happen. So if you become disabled to the point that you are not able to direct your own affairs or make your own decisions for yourself, you want to have appointed that person, and you want to have chosen that person yourself. If you don't have a power of attorney document in place, you're probably going to end up in guardianship court. Most people with a power of attorney can avoid the guardianship process. The difference between the two is a power of attorney cannot make you do anything. A guardian can. And I use that term. These are Kentucky terms. So in Kentucky, you are the guardian of the person, meaning you make the medical and care decisions for the person, and you are the conservator of the money. And so other states kind of intermingle those terms or use separate terms, but that's what it means here in Kentucky. And so if you've had some medical event happen and the doctor needs somebody to make decisions and there isn't a healthcare power of attorney in place, you're going to end up in guardianship court, meaning you're going to go in front of a judge and there are going to have to be medical reports and somebody's going to make a decision and the judge is going to decide who your guardian is. They're going to appoint the most appropriate person. And that's okay if that's what you have to do. But I would want to make the decision myself about who my person would be. I would not want a judge deciding. You talked about how many decisions people make every day. Judges, I'm sure, make many times that. And, decision fatigue is real, and they are just analyzing the situation in front of them. They don't know your past history, your past relationship, if you really would rather one sister over the other sister. So a power of attorney document is probably the number one thing that I suggest to people. Um, Along those lines, we talk about special needs planning. And so we do special needs planning for special needs people from birth. You can be born as a special needs person with some sort of medical issue, or you can become one. You can have some sort of dementia diagnosis, or any one of us could be hit by a truck crossing the street. And so when we do our documents, we also put special needs triggers in them, meaning a lot of special needs people are entitled to some government benefits, Social Security benefits, maybe Medicaid benefits. And we want to make sure that they don't inherit money in a way that is going to mess up their benefits. Because if any of you have ever interacted with any of the government agencies, it was probably a lot of hoops to jump through to get them on benefits to begin with. And so we don't want to kick them off. Because what happens, and a lot of times we use nursing facilities as an example, is that if you live in a nursing home, you are a special needs person. You can qualify for Medicaid, which is a government benefit, and that is for people that are unable to pay for themselves. There's nothing worse than going through the whole process and suddenly inheriting a bit of money that both kicks you off your benefits, you have to spend down, and then you have to reapply for your benefits. And so we put some trigger language in all of our documents. If they are beneficiaries in any way, saying, if any of my beneficiaries are a special needs individual, we are creating a trust for them and they don't get the funds outright. And that's one of our most common questions. It's usually a sentence or two in our basic wills. And they say, well, none of my kids are special needs persons. Well, they're not now. None of us plan to be, but life happens and things happen. And so we want to be cautious of that and make sure that we just put some of that language in. And so that's something to talk about.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
These are things I would never think about. This is why we need you, Katie. This is why we need you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, there's people watching today that immediately know they need a Katie in their life, but they don't live anywhere near Lexington, Kentucky. So, in your professional opinion, what is the best way for them to find a trusted individual other than just Googling, which, isn't always sometimes, but somewhat. What would you recommend for someone who is away from Lexington, Kentucky to find you or find someone like you?
So there is a organization. It is the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. And it's NAELA for short, NAELA, National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. Think about it, make sure I get my letters correct. And they have a website, which is naela.org. And you can go in on their main page and select your location. And you can search for elder law attorneys by state, and then you can narrow by city, and you can find somebody in your area. And so elder law attorneys are a little different than estate planning attorneys. Estate planning attorneys do wills, trusts, things like that. Elder law attorneys are familiar with long-term care options. And a lot of us work with the facilities in town. We know the case managers at the hospitals. We are familiar with the people at the Medicaid office if we're making a long-term care Medicaid application, if you have a loved one going in the nursing home. And we have a lot of resources. And so those are usually a good starting point to call, finding someone in the area. And word of mouth. is great too. You know, there are several other elder law attorneys here in Lexington, Kentucky, and we're a small community. We all know each other. And so sometimes one attorney is a better fit than another. And if you get a good one, they'll tell you that somebody else is a better fit. And I
Wow.
can tell you here at Bluegrass Elder Law, I have two partners and they are both amazing. And I can tell clients, you know, you should talk to my partner Amy, or you should talk to my partner Mary, because this is something that is better suited for her. Or if I have explained it and we just don't talk the same language. Sometimes I have one of them come in and they explain it, but they phrase it in a way that I would not. And so it's difficult because you're already stressed, and for some reason people think lawyers are scary. We're not.
I don't think you're scary. I think you're smart.
Well, you know, it's like going to the doctor. You're kind of nervous and then you're telling all these things and you're kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, for a lack of a better explanation. And so, you know, we try and be very welcoming, and we don't want to make anybody nervous, but we also want to make sure you understand, and you understand your options and either the pros and cons of those options. And I think that's the scariest for most people, is that you come in and you think I'm going to tell you what to do, and I'm not. I'm going to tell you what your options are. Now, if one of them is greatly is better than all the others, you know, we're going to point that out. But I can't tell you what to do. You know, we're grown ups. So.
Well, I just only pray that my viewers find someone as wonderful as you were with my parents and my brothers. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, it's probably time for me to review all of these things as well. I know when I meet with my financial planner, he's always on me about everything. But I think I probably need to make an appointment and come back in and say, okay, Katie, let's look at this from my perspective and review this. Anything, anything. Well, I guess I could ask you this, and I don't know if you can even answer this. A typical case, how many hours are y'all spending? What's the average cost to the average person, or do you want to even go down that road?
Oh
Because
boy.
talking about average. Just remember knowing it was very reasonable.
I can tell you how our office does it. So all law firms operate different.
Okay.
For us, for new clients, we schedule a new client appointment. They last for 90 minutes. We do charge for them. And so our cost for 90 minutes for a new client is currently $500. But we talk about what you own, how you own it, your family, what your goals are, what your options are, and you leave with some sort of to-do list or a plan. We get a lot of calls, and when we explain our process, we get a little pushback. I think the personal injury attorneys that advertised free consultation have kind of corrupted the minds of some. A free consultation is the attorney explaining the generics of the law, and I've kind of done some of that today. But legal advice is us explaining it around your specific situation. And that's why we do charge for our consultations, because you are getting very specific personal legal advice. Now, when we do documents, we usually do them at a flat fee. Other things are done by retainer, probates, guardianships. If we're doing Medicaid, usually it's a flat fee. Medicaid is very dollar specific when you're making applications, and so we don't ever want anybody to be surprised. We try and be as open and transparent as possible with fees going forward, because we are working on people with fixed incomes or exorbitant medical bills coming in the horizon, and so we want to make sure we're really clear. So I don't have a great answer to your question, but that's kind of how
Well, no, I think you well, as always, Katie, I think you answered it beautifully and very diplomatically, but yet specific. So thank you for that. Any last minute advice or guidance that you have for our viewers? I mean, I think you've done a beautiful job of giving them an overview of just the need for this in their life. Any other last minute things that you would advise them?
The one thing we haven't really talked about is long-term care Medicaid, and like I said, it's a federal program with state-specific rules. But across the board, Medicaid has a 5-year look back, meaning they can look at your assets going back 5 years. And the intention is that you don't give away millions of dollars today and qualify for government benefits tomorrow. But people get in trouble for doing other things, not meaning to. It's just because they didn't know. Things like transferring the house to a child. Some people are intentionally trying to make the 5 years, and talking to an attorney about it is really a great idea. Here in Kentucky, our Medicaid office looks at, well, who paid the real estate taxes and who paid the insurance and the utilities? Because if you don't own the house anymore, why are you paying the taxes on a house that you don't own? That's a gift. And, you know, other things in that situation, I kind of call it the grandparent problem, that every grandchild gets a car at age 16, or I pay your cell phone bill through college, things like that. Those are considered gifts for the Medicaid office and count in that 5-year look back. And some of them can be explained away, some of them can be documented. But when you're in some sort of time of crisis, you don't want the Medicaid office asking you detailed questions about your cell phone bill or things like that. And we just want people to be aware. And our goal is not to convince grandparents to stop doing grandparent things. Our goal is to make sure that they understand what might be coming down the road and why it is or is not a good idea, and maybe setting it up in a way that would be better for everyone.
Well, that's interesting that you said that, because I'm sitting here thinking, oh, I need to talk to her, because I did purchase my parents' home from them 3 years ago. I think it's been 3 years ago. And I pay the taxes, but they live there rent free and they pay their utilities. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we're like, if they did the 5-year look back right now, because it's only been 3 years, would that be a problem in that particular case? Or
A
should
lot
I
of
make it?
times, yeah, a lot of times we do a rental contract. And so
Okay.
that is where, in that situation, parents rent the house back for the cost of utilities, taxes, and insurance. Just like you're a landlord and they're your tenants.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so a lot of times people are set up properly to do so. And I tell people, at least in Kentucky, the Medicaid office depends on the day of the week, the color of the sky, and the caseworker you get as to what they look at. And they're great. Our Medicaid office is fantastic, and they will work with you. But it is a bureaucratic beast of a process.
Well, it's the good old government. It makes me crazy when people want more government regulations. I'm like, you've never dealt with government regulations, obviously, for you to have that opinion.
Agreed.
That's for sure. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought, well, there's so much we could talk about, but that's kind of a biggie. That whole 5-year look back thing. That's why it's so important you get ahead of this.
Mhm. Absolutely. And sometimes we intentionally do things to start the 5-year look back, but we do a lot of crisis planning where there's been a medical incident, and a crisis. And, maybe 3 years ago, grandma decided to pay a year of college, or, give money to whatever. And you did it because you wanted to, and I'm not trying to tell you not to do things that you don't want to do. Um, but we're going back and trying to figure out how we're going to fix it. And fix it might not even be the right explanation, but what are we going to do going forward, and how are we going to make this situation the best for you and best for your loved ones? Um, and because that's always my goal, is to take care of people and make sure that, you know, if we're talking about nursing home, I'm both worried about the one in the nursing home, but I'm more concerned about the spouse at home, because I don't want to impoverish the at home spouse because one of them has such a high care need.
Right. Wow. I mean, yeah. And one of my little tags sentences I say all the time is humans are messy. Okay. Because I deal with people every single day, and my pat answer is humans are messy. And I'm like, man, you kind of really know how messy we really are. How bad we could
Absolutely.
screw it up.
Absolutely. And nobody intends to screw it up, but nobody lives their life in the parameters of government rules from an agency that they might have never intended on interacting with.
Well, exactly. And one
Mhm.
that constantly changes the rules just to make your life miserable as
Of
well.
course.
Well, Katie, I cannot begin to thank you. What a blessing you have been to everybody watching. I'm sure everybody watching is going to forward this episode to all the people they know, and and you have that 168 hours, and you gave my audience an hour today of your valuable time, which we know how valuable it is. And time spent on one thing is time spent away from something else. And so I hope that this hour that you've spent with us will bless you tenfold when it comes back, Katie.
Thank you so much.
Well, for those of you who are regular viewers, next week we're going to meet two polar opposite women in this topic. One is my friend Jennifer Mullins, who I just mentioned to you, who lost her father tragically to a murder, and she became that person that had to deal with all those consequences legally. And then in the same call, we are going to meet another friend of mine, Rachel Bullock, whose mom is in an end of life situation, and who's making a lot of decisions right now to make her passing as easy as possible on those left behind. And these women have agreed to be transparent in a very difficult situation with their stories. And so just pray for them in the coming week, that interview, that God blesses their words and their actions, because I know these are hard stories to tell, and I'm sure Katie sees those hard stories every single day. But they want to help you. They want to help you be better prepared, and to just to keep from some of that heartache that's unnecessary, just simply because lack of planning. So anyway, you guys, thank you so much for joining us in episode number 26 today with Common Sense Choices. Be sure to comment, be sure to share, be sure to check out lindatoupin.com, curtis.pink, and adrenalogic.com. And remember the website that Katie gave you, naela.org, and help you find an elder care lawyer for yourself and your family. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being part of Common Sense Choices.